You a short story from my upcoming book, Memoirs of a Master. The book that is not yet written, not even published, not even really thought about that much, but it's already here. You see, it's already done, and now I'm just letting it create itself. So let's have the... No commissions. I'm charging you double for the book. Let's get the house lights a little low as I tell this poignant story of the master and the student. We don't need music, but just a little dim lighting. And this actually is based on a true story, somewhat. The master was sitting by the beautiful lake on a warm and sunny day, fishing away. He loved fishing because this gave him a chance to be in nature and practice his natural abilities of abundance. It seems that the moment he threw the line in the water, a fish would bite, even though there wasn't any bait on the hook. And he would just reel that fish in, admire its beauty, and of course throw it back into the lake. It was almost effortless, but to the master this was a great way of experiencing that it comes to you. The fish came to him. They were so attracted he didn't even need to put a worm on the hook. As he was enjoying the peace and quiet of this beautiful day in nature, suddenly he heard the rustling in the bushes behind him, turned around to see one of his students, Richard, approaching him in desperation. Master took a deep breath. Here we go again, he thought to himself. It's Richard. Richard came up to the master and said, Master, Master, I am in a terrible state of being. In spite of all the classes I've taken, in spite of all the teaching and the studying, I find myself in worse condition than ever. I'm broke. I can't pay my bills. My car is in the shop and I have not enough money to get it out. I'm behind on paying for my house and there's a good chance that I'm going to lose it. I barely have enough money to eat. Master, Master, what can I do? Please, I'm desperate for your help. Tell me something, Master. Share something with me, Master. But I'm on the edge. I think, Master, I'm going to cross over the line. I don't want to live anymore. The master took a deep breath and laughed to himself, not out loud, of course, but laughed to himself because he had heard this so many times from Richard and others like Richard, the moment of desperation. And but potentially an important moment because, well, moments like these were the times when humans seem to make the greatest changes, or not. So the master said, Dear Richard, how much money do you need to resolve your problems? How much money is it that you need? And Richard took a deep breath and said, Master, Master, I only need $5,000. And the master, without showing any expression on his face, laughed to himself and he said, Stupid Richard, he should have asked for 50,000. But he's so desperate, so limited in his thoughts and even in his imagination that he asked only for $5,000. The master paused for a long time, intentionally, of course, playing out the whole drama that he was having with Richard and actually rather enjoying it because the master saw himself in Richard from about 5 lifetimes ago, desperate, still feeding off of other people, still, in spite of all the classes in the schools and everything else, still insisting that things were outside of him rather than within him. Finally, the master said, Richard, I'll loan you the money. I'll give you the money, $5,000. And the master reached into his pocket, and even though he hadn't put any money into his pocket earlier that day, when he put his hand in, he suddenly found $5,000. Exactly what was needed. And that's the way it is with masters. Now, whether he actually put money in his pocket that morning, intuitively knowing Richard would come along or not, he had forgotten because it didn't matter. The money was there. Master didn't even know where he got the money. It was just there, and he didn't question it. So he handed the money to Richard, $100 at a time, counting it out. Richard's eyes were wide open. He couldn't believe that the master was actually giving him this money. He couldn't believe that now he could go and solve his problems, pay his bills, get his car fixed. Of course, he promised a lot of things to the master in this moment of desperation. I'll pay you back, master, with interest. The master laughed to himself. Here goes Richard lying again. He said, oh, master, I'll never, ever forget what you've done for me. And the master laughed again. He said, yes, yes. And one of these days you'll either forget me or betray me, but it doesn't matter. The master finished handing Richard the money, and Richard ran with barely a real thanks, a genuine thanks, but ran off. The master went back to fishing, pulling in one fish after the other. So easy it is, thought the master. This whole thing of fishing, it's like life. It comes to you. You take what you need, you put the rest back, but you never limit yourself. 6 months later, the master was sitting at an outdoor cafe, once again enjoying the beautiful weather and having a triple shot caramel macchiato with 3 chocolate croissants. Because you see, a master doesn't diet. A master doesn't worry about all these things. That's for the limited humans who think that things are bad for them. The master could eat anything, whether it was fish or whether it was a caramel macchiato. It didn't matter. And the master could drink 5 of them, and it didn't matter, because his body was always responding to him. It didn't matter that there were a lot of calories or too much caffeine or what the scientists said about coffee or anything else. The master was in command of his body and his energy, so it responded appropriately to him. While sipping his wonderful drink on this beautiful sunny day, he happened to look up and notice Richard walking by. Richard looked a mess. His clothes were tattered. His hair was disheveled. He had a long, grungy beard by this time, worn out sandals and dirty feet. The master thought to himself, this is not what a master should look like. And of course, Richard was not a master. The master called out and said, Richard, come over for a moment. Have a cup of coffee. Richard said, but I don't have any money. I can't afford a cup. The master said, well, that's too bad. I guess you can watch me enjoy mine. Now, the master had once given him $5,000. One would think that the master could easily buy him a cup of coffee, even plain coffee. But the master was tired of playing the game now. The master said, Richard, what happened? What happened to the money? What happened to your life? So, master, it was terrible. I took the money and I got my car out of the shop, but a week later I was in a terrible accident. Smashed my car. It was totaled. And he said, on top of that, he said, I was at the store one night and thieves came in, robbers, and they took most of the rest of the money. And what little I had left, I had to give to a friend who was terribly desperate, so I have nothing left. And he said, as a matter of fact, master, I'm more in debt than I ever was. Richard said, master, would it be possible? Please, I'll never, ever ask you again. I promise. And for another $5,000 today, I'll gladly repay you on Tuesday. No, that's Sunday. I'll gladly repay you in 6 months, the rest of all the money, with interest, of course, master. The master took a deep breath. Said, no, Richard, I wanted to prove a point to you. And I did. And the point is that you're in a pattern and you're not willing to get out. And that pattern is just enough. You're in that consciousness of just enough. And no matter if I had given you $10,000 or $50,000, I could have predicted that we would be meeting like this, that you would once again be broke, once again desperate, once again trying to feed off of me, once again lying to yourself. Once was enough, Richard. No more. And, as a matter of fact, Richard, not only do you owe me the $5,000 from before plus interest, but you owe me for all the classes that you've been coming to. And I don't want to see you again until you fully repay every penny. End of the story. That was funny.